Greetings, humans. Zach here, welcoming you to another book discussion with Sequestered Superlative. Every week we get together and talk about what it is we've been reading the week prior, how we feel about it, and how many times it did or didn't blow our minds. Current book calendar, upcoming reading, book discussion dates, and more can be found at sequesteredsuperlative.com. Enjoy the show. All right, here we go. This is discussion 2 for 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos by Jordan Peterson. Some of the points we cover are interactions with your internal critic, discipline equals freedom, childhood experiences and lessons, personal knowledge of suffering, and preparation. Join us next week for our discussion on Rules 7, 8, and 9.
It's very common.
Oh, it's
I
great.
did too, but like rewinded.
It was crazy. I had a dream that like I was going over to Zach's house to do the thing, and then like I got lost and like it was just nuts.
You got
Then I
stuck in the
woke up and it
underworld,
was
bro.
still going. Yeah, like the book was still going.
Maleficent was enticing you with her evil nature.
Yeah.
She's just a representation of chaos, man. You were lost. It makes
Yeah,
sense.
I watched the Sinbad movie yesterday, and I was like, "That lady's chaos. What the hell?"
Wait. Sinbad as in like Sinbad the animated one, or Sinbad like
Yeah.
Sinbad the actor from the '90s who played the pirate who like was like
No,
semi-gay
I
but
think it was
also
Brad
really
Pitt.
cool.
I think the voice was Brad Pitt.
It's a different Sinbad, but you know Sinbad the pirate from the '90s. Like he was a hip dude who was like Shaq, you know.
Yeah.
It wasn't Shaq. There's like a
the
Mandela
animated.
effect
I think
thing
it was
where
DreamWorks Animation.
Shaq had a movie, and
Shaq
was-
had a couple movies and they were awesome. Like
but
the
it
one where he was a
actually the other
magician.
guy, like Shazam,
You know,
the movie.
yeah, Shazam was fucking awesome.
Yeah, but go look it up. Like,
What are we looking up about it?
so
Yo, Zach, you would dig this drink. It's coconut milk, chai tea latte, chai mix, and then coconut oil infused with cannabis.
What?
that sounds great.
That sounds crazy. What's coconut oil infused with cannabis like?
Just to get high?
Yeah, of course.
That's amazing.
Is it relevant?
Is it relevant?
Yeah,
Are you relevant?
probably not. I was just saying I watched the Sinbad movie and the bad guy in it is a lady. It does represent chaos. So I thought that was cool.
When you had that dream and you had the Maleficent moment, did you have the idea that maybe you're like having kids in the future and that you didn't raise them correctly?
No, I was trying to do laundry. For whatever reason, I was gonna do it at Zach's place, but he wouldn't tell me where his washing machine was. So I left, and then I was like, "Oh wait, I'm supposed to come back, and we're supposed to do the podcast thing or whatever this is."
No
Dream
goddamn
Zach's
laundry.
just like, fuck off my detergent.
Yeah, Zach was like, "I'm reading this book. You can't do laundry." No.
Zach, don't be so stingy with your detergent in the dream world.
What areas of your life have you been able to observe your own entrance into willful blindness?
It's a hard question.
I thought we'd start off with the hardest one.
I think in Jordan Peterson's philosophy, anytime that you tell any lie, you're entering that self-delusional state that is the building up of chaos that leads to the antipathesis of temptation, the Satan moment. I mean, in Jordan Peterson's direct words, and I would quote, is that, you know, when even the whitest lie is the building moment of chaos that is the building block and framework.
Yeah.
It's true. I don't know. Probably about like all kinds of stuff, like diet and like fitness and like all that kind of stuff.
That's what I was gonna say. The most apparent is probably diet. Like, definitely, there's frequent times when I'm just like gorging myself, and I'm fully aware.
It may or may not be a pizza.
Yeah, well,
it may or may not be the first pizza that day.
Is a pizza.
Or poutine.
Or what?
Poutine.
I thought you said
not the poutine.
Dude, I was telling somebody about that the other day. Oof, that is chaos.
Poutine is
I had
the
Zach
chaos.
I heard you guys are going there.
We did it. We went there and got chaotic.
Right.
Was it really good poutine though?
Oh my god.
It was
dude.
the only poutine I've ever had, so I don't know.
It was really good.
It was
though.
good. It was better with hot sauce. When you put the hot sauce on it, it entered in another dimension of like extraordinary.
I could see that being good. I wish I had ketchup for it, but I think that's
Ketchup.
because like I'm disgusting.
Yeah, well.
Not really. I mean, French fries and ketchup are kind of a standard. Mashed potatoes and ketchup also kind of a standard.
Yeah, that's.
You
I've tried that
strange
before.
people.
I prefer it not with that though.
I've never heard of that.
I like mashed potatoes and brown gravy like all day. But,
Yes.
but for whatever reason, I feel like ketchup is better on the fries because they're like salty and stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas potatoes are more buttery.
We should do a swimming pool full of mashed potatoes
Oh yeah.
at some point.
That would feel real strange.
Oh man, it would taste great.
Is it gonna be warm?
I don't know. Probably. So anyways, rule 4. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today.
Yeah.
I like this chapter the best.
Has there ever been a time in your life when you learned something about yourself that you didn't know before and it was potentially shocking?
That's not even on the list of questions.
Is this the chapter where he starts going back into his like upbringing and cold buttfuck cold place?
No.
Romania?
What?
No, he's from Canada, the land of poutine.
Oh yeah.
Romania?
He said something about Romania.
No.
Yeah, at some point he said something about Romania. I remember it standing out to me.
It's possible that somewhere in here he says something about Romania.
Dude,
This is the one where he talks about like rural communities, like there's like one person gets to be homecoming queen, some person gets to do the spelling bee, and now it's like if you're good at anything, you can look up on the internet and there are like a million people better than you.
yeah.
So I started off.
Oh yeah, that was pretty fascinating stuff. And then he said to basically set goals for yourself all the time to create a sense of order in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He talks about how like it doesn't ever really make sense to compare yourself to other people because you're usually only comparing one aspect of you against one aspect of them. Whereas they're like that doesn't even really make sense to do because there are so many different aspects.
Then again, he also came from a really small town, like one of those small towns, like a rural town. So in that small town, he is the shit.
But he's also shit out of 7 billion people.
That's true.
There probably wasn't a point where he was. I think the point of it is that like when he was, deciding to become a like psychologist or whatever he is, there were obviously better psychologists, and this goes for everybody. Like anybody that was ever wanting to be anything, and even is the current best at their thing, like you have to ignore the fact that there are better people. Otherwise, it's going to get in your way.
Yeah, he makes a point about the like cacophony of existence, and talks about the way the human mind works to kind of filter those things down through categories and like willful blindness. That's sometimes a good thing because if you pay attention to everything, you're going to limit the amount of things you can apply yourself to fully.
Yeah. It is kind of amazing how, like, we'll use like this isn't going to matter in the long run, or like I'm not going to become the best at this in the world, so I'm not even going to try, like as an excuse,
Right.
for not doing stuff.
Yeah, kind of rationalizing yourself out of the picture because of the big picture and that it's so big.
Yeah, as opposed to like the truth, which is like, yeah, it's going to be hard to be good at this,
Mm-hmm.
and
But-
it's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah, but fucking kill it because that's the only way you're going to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and be able to make those sacrifices. Because no matter what, if you're going to be great at anything, you're going to sacrifice a hell of a lot of everything else. I mean, you're going to make sacrifices. It's going to be work, but in his philosophy, that work's not a bad thing. It makes you a better person.
Yeah, it made me think of the recent stuff Jocko Willink's done with his new book. Discipline equals freedom.
I totally see the semblance between a lot of Jordan Peterson's personal philosophies that he kind of introduces into the book about extreme responsibility and discipline, and Jocko's philosophy as well.
Yeah, extreme ownership.
It's true.
Yeah.
I like when he said, "Tell the truth instead of manipulating the world." That's
Mhm.
hard times.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us intuitively or have been told that like not saying things isn't like it's lying by omission. But he goes like a step further and he's like talking about how silence is like just a blatant lie, and then like the thing that comes from that is tyranny, because you're giving people basically the opportunity to walk over you, or you're empowering them to, you're giving them power over you.
Yeah.
And part of that I completely agree with, and I think he also recognizes the fact to have a functioning society that, it's going to be pretty impossible that there's like you were saying, a very good important part to having certain blind sites to function at the same time.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting the way he kind of goes through that kind of system we have, looking at the world, paring things down, the way that interacts with the past, and how people have been doing that for a really long time. And we get these like corpuses of information. Corpuses? I don't know if that's a word. Sounds like porpoises. Um, where we have rules and structures that our society is based off of. And he gives some really good like justifications, and like these are why these things are good, and we should probably just listen to them until we can figure shit out on ourselves, by ourselves.
Well, I mean, the entire idea of the book, the premise is order versus chaos, and he's obviously taking the role of the person that believes in order, that believes in personal order, extreme order, societal order, in all ways. And in that, being, he kind of puts himself out there in that on that ledge.
I think he definitely like says there needs to be a balance. But I think that he would say that there's no way that you can survive in the chaos without having like a foundation of order.
Well, I mean, I think he's what I can see that also, but I also see a really strong hand on him saying that almost an anti-chaos, anti-deception philosophy, of extreme responsibility and stuff. And I can see why he's justifying the world systems and how things have created and what is evil and what is good and how society has been built up because we've come together to create order. And that's what he's trying to pronunciate.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I think that he definitely probably leans. I mean, I guess it's hard to be chaotic. I think it's almost like, chaos is nature. So, like, you better be as ordered as possible.
Yeah, to advance as a society and as a people.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the thing that humans like have going for them. This organization
And maybe I was saying that wrong too when what I just said, because maybe he's not against chaos. He does respect the balance, but what he seems to be completely against is the lack of either.
yeah, that might be. I might agree with that more.
Yeah, I think what he was talking about in one of the previous rules, where he was talking about there's three constituent elements of reality, of our reality, which are order, chaos, and then consciousness, which is the mediator between them. And like his kind of punchline there was that, running the knife edge between those things so that you're adequately sharp and aware, to the chaos, allows you to like thrive in the proper amount of order while still growing by rubbing up against the chaos.
Yeah.
Sounds like a cat. Rubbing up against things.
But didn't he also say like to like every once in a while dip into it as well purposefully, not just rub up against it?
Yeah, I mean, a big way that he explains things is that you have to experience the chaos in order, like it's the part of the journey, is sometimes existing more in the chaos in order to learn the potential things that could go wrong, or actually have them go wrong, and then grow from that.
Yeah, I kind of envision it like almost like you have your home or your base or whatever, and then you might go out, once you're strong and once you're like prepared for stuff, then you go out into the chaos and like grow and like, you can't just sit home all the time, but like you have to have a good base of operations first, and then you can like make excursions or something.
Yeah.
Kind of how I envision it.
It kind of makes a lot of sense, as well as kind of what he talks about when it comes to raising your children and giving them a good base to begin with.
Yeah.
Creating order for your children right off the bat and giving them an idea of what chaos is.
What do you guys think about the things he says about the internal critic, where you have this, you kind of like your ego, whatever you want to call it, that's inside your head, kind of talking potentially negatively to you, and beginning to work with that and take it into account and having a conversation with it rather than being just influenced negatively by it.
I thought it was really interesting how he talked about like talking to yourself about doing the dishes and then like talking to yourself about the reward and like all that kind of stuff. Like I haven't really tried anything quite like that, but
That was the exact thing he said, wasn't it? Was the
Yeah.
dishes. Like go home and do the dishes, maybe even take a walk.
I feel like that's very important, honestly, to like talk to yourself about those types of things and like convince yourself to do them.
yeah.
What is it? Creating positive feedback loops once again, kind of once another loop of feedback loops within this book.
Right.
Yeah, there was like a Patreon Q&A he did where this guy was like, I really want to do your self-authoring suite, but I can never sit down and make myself do it. And he just like went off basically on this same direction, talking about negotiating with yourself. And he was like breaking it down. He's like, if you can sit down and open the web page, or he's like, he's like to his constituents, go into your email and find the login information. Can you do that? No? Okay. Like, just open your email. Can you do that? It's like, great. Go like have a beer. he's like, sit down and do that. The next day, he's like, but he was saying it like kind of snarkily, kind of like he does. He was like, just if you can't do that, it's okay. You're worthless. Like it's, um, but it's no small thing to just do the first thing. So he's like, do that, and then it builds and builds and builds when you have that relationship with your like kind of inner dialogue where you're actually working out like how you feel, how to motivate yourself, and how to like reward yourself when you're going through these processes.
Yeah, it is funny how we'll make excuses for stuff. Or like what I find myself doing is I'll say like, okay, I know I want to do this thing and I should do it. Like I think I want to do it, but it's a lot of work. So, or it might be stressful, or maybe it'll make myself self-conscious. Like I know it's going to be uncomfortable, and so I'll be like, well, I'll do it in 3 months, or I'll do it after I move apartments. Like I'll do it after I like I'll set these like these time frames, and then when the time frame hits, like, have I done it yet? I don't know. Not always,
Yeah.
Or are you going to?
Right.
Yeah, that's between complete avoidance and procrastination. There is definitely kind of a gray area.
Yeah.
I find myself there all the time as well. Like most people do.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's just strange. It's just like I don't know if it's something that I only recently probably recognized was even happening,
Right.
Well, I think
it's
you'd have
super
to be
easy
crazy to just do everything impulsively and be a yes man at all times. I mean, you'd have to be manic.
Yeah, that's true.
Have you met Jonathan?
I'm like
No, I don't think so.
Well, not the opposite.
Yeah, but it is interesting that line you toe by setting goals and then following through with them through the conversation with yourself, because it's entirely possible that most of the time you're setting goals almost as an act of procrastination, rather than setting a realistic goal and then like talking to yourself and figuring out what kind of motivation and things you need to do to get yourself to arrive at that goal.
I think the key word there would be realistic. People don't exist in a realistic time frame. Thoughts and ideas aren't exactly within the realm of reality when they're actually going in our head. They're not real. They're not ideas. They're just thoughts, which I think he talks about that later on as well. The difference between thoughts and ideas. And so the reality of actually time management and how to put that out there and how to conquer your own anxieties is a reality that's daunting.
Yeah, and then at the same time, like once you actually start doing a thing, it's just one thing at a time. Like it's actually usually not that bad.
And then a beer.
And then a beer. Yeah, I thought it was interesting with the thing where he's like, you know, I'm gonna do dishes and then I'm gonna get myself an espresso, because like I think sometimes we would just go ahead and get ourselves an espresso, but then we would, even while we're doing that, we would know that like that was the wrong thing to be doing because there are stuff that needs to get done. So
But who the fuck goes and buys an espresso and then does nothing? That's my real question. You know, like if I'm gonna buy an espresso, I'm definitely gonna do some dishes. Shit, I'll do your dishes. I'll come to all y'all's houses and do all your fucking dishes if you buy me an espresso.
He does warn against that. He says, beware. Do not do the dishes. Don't get the espresso, and then keep cleaning, because then you'll be punishing yourself.
Yeah, that's true. And I think I've probably done stuff like that too, where I'll just be like, you know what? I need to make my life perfect now. And then like that'll last about 2 seconds and then I'm
miserable.
I've burned myself out and I'm eating pizza with Zach again.
Oh my God.
So jelly, man. That sounds like a perfect day to me.
Are you saying that pizza with Zach is rock bottom?
I mean,
I would trade my rock bottom with you anytime, man.
no, that deep dish
Oh boy.
might have been close.
That's kind of calling my name.
I know.
It's always
My rock
there.
bottom was like 3 days ago when everyone I work with bought Whataburger and I don't eat beef.
Oh.
And they all stared at me and handed me a burger.
Wait, what burger has chicken wings and things?
Yeah, they just went out and bought food without talking to anyone.
I think it's really
I
interesting.
took one bite and then hid in the restroom and threw it away.
I'll be right back, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's cool. I like the first part of this kind of lays out the things we have to contend with the external inputs and the things that are inside of us, our inner critic that's potentially putting up barriers but can be turned to tear down those barriers and start accomplishing things. And then it goes further to talk about the kind of the end game of like self-comparison to better yourself in your life, and how that ties into the big picture of improvement of being, which is not only improving your like day to day, but your future, and then everyone around you, their day to day and their future, and then like it cumulatively progresses towards like through the small steps making like humanity better.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like his thing where he's like, you know, just pick one thing that'll make your life better.
Mm-hmm.
And then just do that one thing. Can you do that? Yes. Because like that's how you do anything. like, every single thing that you do is one thing at a time. There's not another way to do it. But when you think about it, it's like, oh, I have to do all those things. It's like, no, not really.
You know, when I was listening to him talk about this, I definitely had the thought in my head where I was like, you know, he's basically saying having an inner monologue with yourself that is positive, you know, slightly negative in some sense, you know, like critical in the sense of like you can't just be, you know, you do have to thrive and survive and make things better for yourself and other people. You can't just be. And a lot of times, you know, you have to know when to be and when not to be. But I also was thinking in the back of my head, I was like, but if you're already in a positive flow and you're not even having an inner monologue because you're just doing, you're in the state of positive action. You don't actually have to have an inner monologue with yourself. Is that good or bad? Since, you know, his idea is that you really do need to have this inner monologue at all times.
Well, I think like he doesn't ever use these words, but a lot of what he's talking about is like working with your intuition. He gets a little bit more technical with it and explaining like the
Does, yeah.
methods for that. But I think that's really what he's saying, is that you really like your subconscious, you know, like 90% of brain processes are subconscious. Getting in touch with that and learning to take cues from it and talk with it is key towards being more self-aware and then improving things. And so, I mean, I think there's probably a lot of, I don't know, like potential for being so in tune with that the process that he's talking about making conscious can happen like subconsciously. So I
No,
think
that makes
that,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like if you're, in like an egoless flow state, then you're probably not making excuses for yourself.
Right.
But until you reach like, full enlightenment,
Yeah.
then your ego is probably there, like telling you, like, that doesn't want to do the dishes and things like that. So I guess it's probably okay to argue with it if you want to look at it from more of like a,
Oh, you Bolshevik.
and like
You and your communist friends.
it's really like his concept of like what's the one thing you can do right now is like basically the concept, like the Buddhist concept of right action or something.
Right.
So he
Yeah,
just
and
comes at it from
The Eightfold Path.
like he just comes at it from a interestingly different.
Well, what was the example he said to how to make the world a better place? Was what they're doing with the internet? I think is one of the examples he gave.
I don't know.
The internet? No bells are ringing.
Oh,
Yeah, I
sorry.
might have missed
Dead
that.
end.
Yeah, so he sums up this chapter by saying, "Ask and ye shall receive. Knock and the door will open. If you ask as if you want, and knock as if you want to enter, you may be offered with a chance to improve your life. A little, a lot, completely. And with that improvement, some progress will be made in being itself. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today."
Yeah, seems like the only way to do it, really.
I feel like a better person right now just talking to you. So I mean, better than yesterday.
We're all level 7 now.
Good to know.
I don't know what the scale is, but 7.
Make sure to put that on your Tinder profile. I'm a little 7 now.
Oh. Ding.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the fun chapter. Rule 5. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. Since we all have kids and have
Dude, I
vast
love this chapter.
experience with raising little things. So, were you spoiled as a child, and how has this affected you?
Is anyone talking right now? Was anyone in this conversation not spoiled? I mean, like, literally, just get personal.
That's not personal. That's...
I don't know if I was spoiled. I don't consider myself spoiled, but I think like I would have made different choices. Like I would have preferred my parents made some different choices, but
That's kind of the idea that I got listening to this as well. I mean, I mean, there's definitely things that I felt spoiled about in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways, definitely not as well. And I think when I listening to this chapter, I definitely thought, man, he really must spend a lot of fucking time with his kids.
well, as like a clinical psychologist, I'm sure he also spends a lot of time with
Other kids.
people and like other. I don't know how much child stuff he does, but like probably talks to
Just
people.
child murderers. Only child murderers.
I also imagine that when you're an adult growing up with your own children, or you have children that you're raising, you probably see a lot of other children.
Right. Yeah, he talked about that. He did some, like, lots of babysitting and stuff. I don't know. For me, I feel like not spoiled in, like, the traditional sense, but things were provided, or it was never made known to me that I needed to do things, like, across a broad spectrum of things. So that definitely led to me not understanding, like, the way things work and, like, how I fit into things and, like, stuff like that, where could have been some potential benefits of having done things maybe the hard way the first time.
Yeah, I definitely feel like because I grew up in a very like conservative Christian family, and like they're great people, and they're some of the best, like to me, like examples of like what a person living a good like conservative Christian family could be.
Well, I just want to interject. Jordan Peterson would say that anyone living in America or the West is living in a Christian society, or at least something created by a Christian society. So everyone here, by default, no matter where your spiritual view is, grew up in a society that was Christian based.
Yeah, I mean, I would think I would agree with that too, but I just mean like they're pretty much just cookie cutter like conservative Christians. And one of the things that looking back, is I feel like I was a little bit more sheltered than like I needed to be. Like I felt like there were a lot of times that like I had to learn like what the world was actually like. And I don't think it's doing a favor to a child to like hide the world from them, because like they're gonna have to figure it out at some point. So why not do it in like at a point when you as a parent are there to support them and there to help them and there to like guide them through it, but not like just ignore whole parts of like reality. You know what I mean?
All three of us are guys, though, and there's no women in this conversation, which I feel like I just have to point out, because maybe a wife or a mother's point of view would be, like highly different than a male, especially a male at all our age. We're in our 20s. We're all looking back and having consciousness on a different level than at a whole different alien level from adolescence.
Oh yeah,
you're right. I became an alien 2 days ago.
Beep pop, boop pop, beep pop pop pop.
What things have you unknowingly spent an inordinate amount of time on that seem small but add up?
Masturbation.
Probably World of Warcraft.
Hey, all the good stuff.
What were the book examples for this? I don't remember this part.
What did you say?
What does that question have to do with the book? I just don't recall.
He was talking about a parent, a father with a child who didn't want to go to sleep, I believe, and there was fights involved, and so if you spend 30 minutes a day fighting with your kid to go to sleep, then you end up wasting like 2 months out of a year.
Yeah. What do you say, the year or the work year? I was kind of confused about that when he was like the work year, and I was like, what is that relative to?
This is grown-up talk.
Oh, okay.
This is the work year. We don't have
the
normal
work
years.
Yeah. There's only 5 days in the week. The other 2 days are just not days.
Maybe it was opposed to a school year. I'm not sure. But
Yeah,
I don't know. I felt like I spent a lot of time arguing with my parents about like how much time I could spend on the computer and like stuff like that. But
right.
I don't know what the solution to a lot of to that.
Can we blame that on a generational thing? I mean, I know that that's a controversial conversation, that like our parents had parents that in quite often cases, at least the male figure was less emotional. And so our father figures probably felt like they needed to be more connected to us and more friend oriented than, strong, like alpha gorilla oriented in a lot of ways. Like the 60s, 70s male figure of like cold, emotionless alpha male. Like their kids grew up, which are like our fathers, like thinking, man, I wish my dad was more of a friend. And then our dads grew up like when they had us, probably thinking, man, I wish my son or whatever was my friend and not my son.
Yeah. I mean, he actually directly talks about that. He's like, in the 1960s, due to the 1960s and the social things that happened, it increased parental sensitivity to the short-term emotional suffering of their children while heightening their fear of damaging their children to a painful and counterproductive degree.
Yeah, I don't know how much he talks about it in the book, but he's talked elsewhere about how like birth control causes people not to have as many kids as soon, and so like you have fewer kids, and then you value those kids more, and then you usually like shelter them more, and then you end up like having them rely on you when they're like really old, and like that can be like it just seems wrong. Like you see like people who are like older, but they they just rely on their parents for everything.
And I do want to interject real quick that this would have to be a societal conversation, maybe only intermittent at like the Western society. I'd just like to context that, because there are different cultures that have traditions around the world that do involve family. Method. Japan, for instance, maybe parts of Asia, South America, where you live with your family for a long time. Parts of Europe that have traditionally have a different culture than the Western or America or Canada.
And I think there's a big difference between, say, like some of the Asian societies or like the
Mexico's a
like
good point.
like Mexico cultures where like there's definitely a big focus on family, but it's not like they're not like feeding off of each other in a negative way. Whereas like he talks about like how sometimes like the Oedipus construct or whatever, where like you have a overprotective mother who is so wrapped up in her identity of being a mother that she isn't anything else, and then kind of hamstrings her children who then have to live with them, but it's okay because they can rely on her. And it's like this weird like self-destructive sort of relationship.
And I totally see that. And I really loved when he said that too, because like I feel like there's not a lot of people that have the balls to say that. And I feel a lot of things that Jordan Peterson says are really ballsy. Like in the world that we live in, the conversations that are happening, he's a very controversial figure, I think, to a lot of people for that reason, that he says some ballsy shit and he has the facts to back it up. But at the same time, I would say that a woman's point of view on this would be enlightening, because a male, generally speaking, in certain income-based families, takes, generally speaking, he talked about this as well, the salary, figure job where they work to pay for the family so the wife can stay at home and take care of traditional womanly things, or so to speak, wifely deeds, the kids and whatnot. And so I see that people, as they grow, get attached to their egos and their identities. And I understand and completely almost feel bad for that lady who has obviously become a victim of her own, misgivings, and is not really doing her kidney justice. But at the same time, I also feel bad for her because she doesn't have much else to cling to. Maybe she could like join this, find hobbies, but it's sad.
No, I definitely agree. I don't think that we would need to say that like she's the bad guy there. I think that
Devil.
I think that it's just that she may have fallen into one of the many traps that like us as humans could fall into. And at the same time, I think a father could do the exact same thing.
Yeah, with work, like I am the lawyer. That is all I am. I am lawyer man.
Well, I mean, I like, just anecdotally, I know someone whose father will pay for everything that they need if things aren't going well. And because of that, they never really try to do anything. They know that they don't really have to, if your dad's going to pay your rent, if you don't figure out how to get a job, then like, and you're playing a bunch of video games instead, like, like I think the edible mother can be a father figure.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to, discount.
You're just an adultist.
And I guess it probably would be nice if we had a female perspective on a lot of these things.
Or we can just be Genghis Khan and exponentially procreate.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
Problem solved.
There is no problem.
Right there? Okay. Sounds fine, but...
Yeah. Also, this is like an interesting chapter because none of us have any experience with these things except our own childhoods. So
yeah,
to me, it was just mostly interesting. And it's like, sure, I get some like 20/20 hindsight, but
yeah.
And that gives me more like self-knowledge about, potential things that I need to rectify from my past or work with or, change. But as far as like going forward, it's like, that's cool. I'll add this to my list of things to like work on in the future when they're applicable.
It's definitely
I gotta.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
It's definitely something that I hadn't thought about, but like when he's saying that like by the time a kid's 4, like if you haven't like got them normally socialized and stuff, then it might be too late.
They fucked.
Like, I've been around like, children of relatives or like in whatever, church settings and stuff like that. And like, you decide pretty quick when you first meet somebody whether or not there's somebody you want to be around.
Yeah.
And like a lot of the time that probably does have to do with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, he talks about like the knee-jerk reaction, just like instinctually, that we'll have towards people who are just like maladjusted.
Yeah. And a lot of the time it's like you really just can't do anything about it. Like you don't really want to be around them because they are annoying. You
Mhm.
know, like you can't fix them.
I mean, unless you're going to like sequester them.
Yeah, but I mean, he's talked elsewhere about how dangerous that is. You know,
because we're not the savior.
And speaking of dangerous, I mean, I really also, I mean, I completely agree on the point, and I'm glad you brought that up because that was really a fascinating thing. And as someone, I guess, in my 20s, male, and growing up in the time frame that we kind of all grew up, the first thing I did when reading that was like self-victimize myself and be like, oh, fuck, man. All these like anxieties that I had socially are because of my parents. Fuck you guys. And then I did a double take and was like, oh, you know what? This is just a guy's book that I'm reading so I can have thoughts. And it's just one of the thoughts that's going to enter my brain. I'm going to replace that thought with, a deeper thought thinking, oh, hey, like this guy probably actually has experience with lots of kids. Maybe he knows what he's talking about. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But I did really, 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 really like what he was saying about positive reinforcement and knowing when to be firm. I was like, damn, dude, this guy knows when to be firm. Make that fucking child sleep. That's right. Get back in the crib.
Yeah. I mean, I know that I sort of wish that my parents had. I feel like my parents were very protective, and I feel like that sort of translated into me being like not particularly adventurous in like social circumstances and things like that. And like I wish that as a child they had been a little bit less like I don't know, like they were very like stranger danger. They were very like, don't talk to people you don't know, like, and all that. And I can only assume that at least part of my uh what is it? Not introversion.
Your
Is
psyche?
Yeah, I mean I mean part of my personality must have been shaped by that.
Well, that is the eternal debate of, nurture versus nature and kind of when it comes to
Yeah.
play.
And it seems to me like it's most likely a combination of the two. Like I was probably likely to be one way and then ended up being, the way I am because of different things. But just interesting to think about. Like, what if my parents had been a little bit less, strict about that kind of thing, or would I be more? And I would probably have other issues that, were.
You might be addicted to pizza.
Yeah, I might be addicted to
I
pizza.
shared the same introspective thought when hearing that from him, thinking, man, my parents could have done better or whatever, or even self-victimizing myself in multiple ways, being like, oh man, I wish I wasn't an aggressive kid or my parents spent more time reading books like this. But then I also have to consider, being a parent fucking blows dick,
Oh
chunky
yeah.
dick.
I mean, my
And
parents.
it's a hard fucking job, and no one can do it right. Even super therapists or geniuses, no one can fucking parent right. I don't think anyone can parent right ever. There is no perfect parent. I just don't believe in it.
It seems like it would be a lot of luck, and like no one's gonna do it right. I mean, my parents were my age when they had me, and like, man, I can't imagine like doing much of a better job. You know, like
Exactly. Yeah,
all
that's
I have
that's
to
what I'm
learn
trying to say too.
is what they did, and all they have to learn from is what their parents did, and like,
That's wrong, Jonathan. You have all of human history to learn from,
yeah, that's fair.
and that's the point.
But after like a 9-hour work shift, and then maybe you're working extra because you got to pay for the diapers, and diapers are expensive as shit, and then the baby won't fucking be quiet. It will not sleep. Like it just will not. Then you're up for you get 4 hours of sleep before your next 10-hour work shift. And your wife's exhausted because you're emotionally neglecting her, and your dick is hard as fuck because you haven't put it in anything in like a month or two, and your baby's always crying. I mean, I could see how people are gonna make mistakes.
That's
Oh,
why
I
you
could
follow
see
the
it.
rules.
Yeah, and I think that's what he's talking about. I think he's talking about how if you don't follow these rules, all that stress is going to well up, and that's the part of where he talks about uh, making sure that they don't do anything that makes you dislike them. I
Yeah.
think that it's something we don't like to talk about, but like that's a real thing. Like,
People hate their kids.
yeah,
Do you feel like your parents had any secret or not now, but did ever resent you for anything? Because I was reading that and I was wondering in the back of my head, I was like, was this one time like I wonder if like the first time I peed in my peed in my bed, like my dad was just like fucking stupid motherfucker.
I don't
Fucking
think
idiot.
so. I don't think it's less about that and more like, did my parents let me give me some like leeway in one area, and because of that, did I think I had leeway in other areas? Like, were they lazy about one thing, and that caused me, me to break other rules, and then they got upset about those rules?
Well, I feel like that goes more into his boundaries conversation that he was saying about parenting having, inherent boundaries that you have to set because kids are always going to try to push through the boundaries. And
Yeah.
unless you set firm boundaries with firm rewards at all change, which I loved the fact that he was saying you reward your fucking kid all the time. Don't lie to your kid all the time, but reward your kid all the time. Don't lie to your kid, but reward your kid. Be firm. Punish your kid. Smack your kid if he's aggressive, because if not, he will rape someone or murder them. I thought that was cool. Firm parenting.
Yeah, I definitely put a little twist on that. Like up until now or like recently, like I don't know that my views I don't know what my views on that were, but it was probably trending towards like the things he was vehemently like denouncing in here as far as like people saying you should never be physical with your children and whatever the other thing that he said was in that
So do you
vein.
feel like it did it change your views though?
I mean, it definitely gave me some things to think about.
Yeah.
It certainly puts forth some like interesting like behavioral things that exist and how they're ameliorated and combated and altered. And I mean, there's probably some cases to the contrary or some arguments to the contrary, but I don't think that many of them would hold much water. I also haven't heard many of them, so I
I
don't
think
know. But
the best argument that I could interject would be by the comedian Jim Gallagher. He does this wonderful bit where he basically says, oh, hey, in this world you shouldn't even have kids. No, none of us should have kids in this world. It logically does not make sense. But if you're gonna have kids, it's a full-time responsibility and you have to do the fucking best you can ever do. And dare you say that you actually want to hit your kid. Your kid is like 3 foot tall. You're like 6 foot tall. You're double the size. Your arm is the size of their head. And they're looking at you thinking, wow, this fucking giant is about to hit me with something the size of my face in my face.
yeah,
And,
but
dare you say that you want to listen or talk to your kid. So
well,
I
to
don't know.
me,
It's much funnier when he says it. It's a very funny bit.
yeah. But to me, as far
Obviously,
as
I'm not
like
funny.
and
He's funny.
but as an argument against what Peterson puts forth, I feel like that doesn't hold any water because he clearly lays out the importance of defining what hitting your kid means. Because
And he has small arms and small hands, and he's short too, so he can hit his kids all he wants. If you think about
Is that how it works?
it, if
yeah,
you're the size of your kid, you beat the shit out of your kid. Relative strength, arm wrestling, only in arm wrestling does it matter for juice boxes.
I don't know. And granted, like I only have like my upbringing to contrast it with. Like I don't feel like spankings were really that effective for me, and like maybe it's because they weren't bad enough, but like at the same time, like I wouldn't want to like hurt my child. So I always felt like just not letting them do stuff was more effective. Like that's what I hated. I hated when I
Sure. I
wasn't
mean, he
allowed to
talks
do
about the
stuff.
hitting and stuff, and then he sums up and he's like, "Timeout's probably the best thing to do."
Yeah, I mean, if my kid's slapping me in the face, then I'm gonna restrain them physically.
Yeah.
But
I
that's
think that's super effective too because it makes. I don't know if you guys y'all have been physically restrained, both y'all, like as a child.
probably.
Okay, so when it happens, you start crying immediately, like no matter how like the situation. Like you start crying immediately because you cannot move your body. It feels like you cannot breathe. You feel like you're suffocating. Usually you say these things out loud and whoever's restraining you just keeps on holding you because they know that you're just going basically through a tantrum, even at the age of like 8, 9, 10, 7, 6. It's a huge like emotional factor. I mean, you feel really powerless. And the next time you see that person that restrained you forever on, I mean, it could be, I had somebody restrain me at a mental hospital when I was 10, later on be my high school teacher when I was like 15. I hadn't seen him since then. The first time I walked into his classroom, I immediately like had that like alpha dog, like reaction where I was like, oh my God, this guy is like so much stronger than me. I need to like just, I am afraid of him almost. This guy has power. And so it does psychologically really affect your kid if you do restrain them. And it doesn't hurt them at all, although it makes them, of course, cry. And
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's like the overarching theme is that it's all of the dominance game where kids are trying to find out boundaries and assert dominance, and the role of the parent in those situations is to make those boundaries clear through asserting dominance, whether that looks like, verbal or some sort of timeout or something like that.
Yeah, I think he says something like it's very important for you to be a like realistic version of society.
A proxy.
Yeah.
You can be a
So cool.
you can be a good one, you can be a helpful one, you can be a slightly merciful one, but you still have to be like that, because if you don't, I mean, if you don't act right, then you're not going to have friends. You're not going to, like, your professional stuff could be weird. Like, it all just stems from that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, if they're throwing a tantrum and like you stop them and then you explain to them, to the best that they can understand, that people don't like it when people do that, you know?
It doesn't matter to a kid throwing a tantrum if people like it or not. Though. I mean, do you remember throwing a tantrum as a kid? I remember throwing tantrums so hard that I'd be like having rivers of snot coming out of my face, and like my face would be like beet red. I'd be crying for like an hour and just screaming bloody murder. If you told me people didn't like it, I'd be like, fuck other people in the ass. I'm 8 years old. I'll fucking shove my finger in their eye sockets.
Yeah.
Fuck them.
I mean, I guess I would say that any kind of conversation like that would have to happen after they calm down.
Right.
I think there's been I think it was a Tim Ferriss podcast with somebody, maybe Josh Waitzkin, I don't know, and they just talk about what they do with their kids, and like they'll, after the like tantrum or whatever, they'll be like, so can you tell me what was happening there? Like, can you explain to me how you were feeling, and like see if the kid will like talk about it, and I mean, a lot of the time they will, I think.
What if our parents just didn't know how to assert dominance over us in a way that mattered to us? Like, what if our parents bought Game Boys for themselves and then got the high scores and showed it to us and was just like, look at this, bitch. I got a high score. That's right. You fucking suck still. You're my kid still. That's right. You go back and do the fucking chores right now because I got the high score. What if that was like the dominance factor of our parents? Wouldn't that be a trip?
Maybe.
Get inspired to be good at games.
I don't know. To me, there's like definitely like a constructive kind of like sternness and like hardness versus like sort of like just torturing your kids,
Yeah.
Anything
Okay.
else on
Rule
this?
6.
All right.
Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. Hoorah! Have you ever had a moment where you're like, damn, life is suffering?
At least once every day when I wake up and the fan hits me, because Katie puts it on 58 degrees now and then turns the fan on super high. And so I try to get out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the fan hits my like nearly naked, withered up raisin body. And I just fucking turn into like a freeze dried shrimp. I just fucking want to die, climb in a sock. I'm looking for Miss Muffet's shoe in my closet. I'm hiding.
How did this affect you? What were the conclusions beyond that you came to?
I'm sorry.
For me, like, not really. I mean, I'm sure there have. To me, whenever I hear people say that like life is suffering, or that it's like terrible, or that it's whatever, like it always seems like they're overplaying it to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think more recently I've just started to figure out that that's just like a temperamental thing on my part. Plus, like, I haven't actually had anything like too bad happen. So
That's awesome.
I think it's worth noting, though, that life is suffering doesn't mean bad things happening. It just means that, like, nothing's easy. Like, there's always an amount of work that has to be done to do things.
That's true.
And this is such an old concept. Yeah, this is definitely nothing new. No, not a new conversation to have, not a new concept to have. It's probably one of the oldest things that anyone that could ever consciously derive life, which he does go into that too, the evolution of consciousness and the idea of working and suffering, Adam and Eve and whatnot. So it's not a new thing whatsoever.
All right, that's it. We're good. Are there things that you prepare for in your life because acts of God happened and it's better to be prepared?
I guess I would say like everything that I can think of, but
Do you look in Jonathan's closet and there's like 700 Campbell's soup cans and like a radiation suit and a Geiger meter?
no.
Next time I get a cold, I'm gonna come to your house. Just hide in your closet.
Then I guess if in that case the answer may be nothing, but
Well,
I
like,
just assume that everything's gonna keep going right,
yeah,
and then like just make sure that like I know how to save money.
right.
Once again, we are a society that have created order, and this society is developed in a way that has been orderly by people that have goals and ambitions that create a balance between order and chaos. And therefore, we have things like car insurance, life insurance, medical insurance, the modern medical system, healthcare, psychological evaluations, subconscious evaluations, psychotherapy, medicine. These are all things that have rained in from people, preparing for the worst
What
in
if
the
your car
best
runs
way.
out of gas?
Well, it's happened to me many times. You usually have to have Uber. That was created by the problem, of course,
So
of
I
not
was
having a car or
thinking about
walking.
this, and like the things I came up with are like I have tools in my car, and I have a gas can in my car, and like things that would fix my car if it broke. And then like every night before I go to sleep, I put out my clothes and like pack my bag and my lunch for the next day because I might do something stupid and not go to sleep and wake up late. So like I know that those things happen, or even worse things could happen that I don't know of, and so I prepare for them. But like those things seem to have an immense effect, kind of a cascade upwards effect on life in general, um, because like the peace of mind that that engenders, like I know that nothing could happen, that I won't have the things I need for tomorrow. I know that like very few things could happen with my car anywhere where it would be like catastrophic and like debilitating for a long period of time. So like, but then it goes further, and then like I get beyond that peace of mind. It gives me the ability to free up time from having to think about or do those things maybe in a less prepared manner, and then I get extra time, and I get to prepare for other things and to go do things. It seems like a very good strategy to kind of pick out the things in life that bear preparing for and just do it like consistently. That way you no longer have like we were saying earlier, most of the brain is subconscious, and like whether we know it or not, we have these subroutines that are thinking about things that can go wrong or things that need to happen in the future, items on our to-do list, our calendar that we may not think about for weeks at a time, but still underneath those thought processes are happening and causes anxiety, or at least uh, some negative effect just because they're taking up like brain power.
Bills, man. Bills and laundry.
Yeah. So then you set up like auto pay and like hire a dry cleaning service or schedule a day to do your laundry.
I'm gonna schedule a Zach to come over to help me do those things. Not the laundry, you don't have to do that,
Zacks
but to
are
help me set up an
super
auto pay,
expensive.
that sounds wonderful. I need your help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean, like just like as far as like budgeting goes, like the not having the stress of like knowing whether or not you're gonna have enough money for stuff is really nice.
I think it's really cool how this
Just
ties
to not have to
into,
think about that, and that goes sort of for everything.
yeah, but like how that ties into the theme of the chapter, which is not criticizing the world before you've sorted shit out for yourself. And like, I think an element of sorting yourself out is obviously what we just talked about. But then you can like observe the opposite of that, people that don't do that and then criticize things. And I don't know, you see people doing like detrimental things to their life, and then maybe having strong opinions or being outspoken against things, and it's very like clear to see that probably most of what they're angry about is like their life being chaotic.
Did you get the undertone of like basically him saying every freshman and sophomore in every university in America needs to like try to fight me right now? Did you
Oh,
think he was like calling them out? You
it's
think he's
not an
just like,
undertone,
yo,
like
bitches, let's fight.
I
I
mean
hate you freshmen, sophomore motherfuckers. Try to be all judgy and shit. Let's
there's
throw down. I got some Nietzsche up your butthole.
yeah, he's definitely got many speeches and talks that in no way have an undertone but are directly about that.
So this chapter was maybe an undertone of like, hey, like you darn whippersnapper kids, I like it when you skateboard, but stop saying stuff that you just don't know about.
Yeah, I mean that's one of his big things is that, you're just not, you don't have enough experience to say anything. Go sort your shit out.
Yeah, one of the things he says a lot.
Well, I think that's baller.
One of the things he says a lot is that people don't have ideas, ideas have people. So like most of the time you don't really know why you're doing stuff like politically or telling people what they should be and shouldn't doing. Like most of the time you trying to like control other people is going to be ineffective and or misguided, or you're playing in someone else's agenda. And his big thing is a lot of the social justice stuff, which
Yeah.
he provides a lot of scientific information about why a lot of that may or may not be accurate.
Is that our kitchen?
And I feel like a lot of the time, I know there have been times when I have found myself like strangely passionate about a political idea, and then I will think about it and I'll realize that I don't actually know anything about it, and it's probably way more complicated than like I'm making it.
That's such a wise statement, because there are people that spend their entire lives, dedicated to this system and still know very little, but probably know a fuck ton more than we do. But isn't it crazy if you spend like one day on a college campus or with people that are in school, it's like almost like they suck you into this little world of like, I guess like the fashionable new political speak
That's
of,
why
of the
Denton's the
age.
devil.
What?
That's why Denton is the devil.
Denton?
Or what?
Because the
I mean,
entire
any college,
town.
dude. I mean, UTSA, UT. I mean, could be any college, and any college students that I've hung out with. General. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I hate
manage a
college
couple of
people.
college students now, and it's the same. No matter where you go, or hanging out with Corey for like 10 seconds. But I mean, if that's what you're trying to say, I mean, of course, Corey is like a hotbed for this.
I'm not even saying Corey. I
Slight.
just didn't. It's just a bunch of weird, delusional people.
I think it's most colleges, to be honest. I think there's like and I think it's not just most colleges. I think it's really anyone that went to any college for the last, maybe the existence of college in general. It's a place where ideas and young people come together.
Sure.
I think has been a hip thing forever.
They need to chill.
In the 70s, it was hip to have new ideas, and those new ideas were praised by society in many good ways. But they were also young kids who didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. They didn't know a lot about Vietnam or the Khmer Rouge that was, coming to power. They didn't know about that fucking shit. If they did, maybe they would, go suck a dick and stop doing acid. I don't know, but it's not a new thing.
I don't want to do that.
That's not what I signed up for here.
Wait
Plot twist.
Do we have to stop doing
Everyone sign here.
What's happening?
Have you ever chosen to act with honor and humility when that wasn't your initial plan was, and it turned out for the better? A good example I heard the other day was there's this guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, and he's like an entrepreneur dude, and he was talking, he had a guest on his podcast, or he was a guest on someone's podcast, and the dude was like, hey, I've actually met you before, and Gary didn't remember that. He was like, we were in New York, and I passed you on the street, and I was like, what's up, Gary? And Gary just kind of walked past, but then he turned around, and the guy was like, yeah, I saw it on your face. You were like living the brand, living your thing, and you came back and said, what's up? Like, how's it going? What's your plan? Or what's your dream? Or something along those lines. And he told him, and he was like, good, like, go kill it. And he walked away. But like, he totally could have just kept walking, but instead, like, he was true to what he like is about, came back and expressed that in like a with like camaraderie.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a specific example, but like there are definitely times when I know I could get away with like not doing the correct thing in certain circumstances, and in general I find that it's better just to like suck up an uncomfortable situation and just do the right thing. It kind of goes with like being honest. A lot of the time I feel like a lot of this stuff isn't honest. Like a lot of the time when you make a mistake that isn't honorable or humble, then like a lot of the time it has to do with dishonesty, for me anyway. But and then I find that when I do the right thing, which may be more uncomfortable for me, then it just turns out better. Like at least then we're dealing with the issue and like we're moving forward.
I definitely avoid uncomfortable situations quite often as well. You know, I mean, sometimes a lot of people come up to me and try to talk to me, and I'll just kind of walk by them, whether if I work downtown or something, or if I'm just having like a day where I feel introverted and I don't feel like talking to people, I'm shy. You know, I avoid doing things that I know might be good for me, like I don't know, engaging with people that could be my friend potentially, and I'm just like, hey, you know what? Instead, I'll just focus on myself, do laundry, go work out, things like that. So I mean, I think it's not the worst thing in the world. I guess there's microaggressions that everyone does too. I definitely am responsible for a lot of microaggressions.
Yeah, I don't know what I think about those.
They're micro, so you just get on the meta side of the micro.
Yeah.
Meta micro. So I think the
Like
big theme.
I used a Mac today, and that was a microaggression.
Yeah, I'm triggered.
What does that mean? We're on a Mac right now. You're being recorded on a Mac.
Oh no.
Once again, I feel like I'm on a microaggression stunt, and I might be protesting something in the government at the same time.
What? I'm lost. You lost me. Or do things fall apart because we have not paid sufficient attention?
All the time.
Oh yeah.
Isn't that like the entire idea of it? You know, if you don't pay attention to an omelet when you're cooking it, it kind of just burns. You know, if you don't pay attention to your dirty fucking underwear, your underwear in a week are going to smell like piss. And then you're walking around smelling piss, being subconscious because you know you're wearing piss underwear.
Suppose that would happen, yeah.
It all becomes clear.
I might have done that in college.
I definitely did it once or twice in college.
I did that in 2015.
I kind of wonder, sometimes I look back recently and I was like wondering, like, man, how in college when I had roommates, because I had one roommate who did all of our laundry. Who literally, he did all of our laundry. Yeah, Landon did all of our laundry when I lived with him. And I literally don't know how my socks or underwear got washed for like a year. No, I don't. I literally don't. I'm just like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah. I don't know. I think
maybe I didn't have washed underwear for a year. I don't know. I'll have to ask Landon next time I see him. Hey man, how many times you washed my underwear in that year?
You definitely didn't have washed feet.
I showered at least once every other day.
Mm-hmm.
At least.
Mm-hmm. Tell me more.
Oh, that was like freshman year when I lived with you. I didn't fucking know. I definitely didn't wash. I was letting my feet grow micro bacteria.
Oh, your feet. You were microaggressioning your feet.
Yeah, I was.
You.
I was microaggressioning the world of fungus.
Just your presence was maybe.
I was scaring chicks off. I was just scaring people away.
Yeah,
like a scarecrow.
My willpower got stronger. For sure.
Also, your love of cheese.
Oh my god.
This chapter is a lot like the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the reasons why the first one is really just a good basis for all the rest of them.
Yeah.
The thing I find interesting about this one is sort of just like you need to be really careful about when you have an opinion about anything, because like it really takes a lot of experience to have a good opinion and to actually know what you're talking about in most circumstances. And so when we give advice to other people, like I feel like probably like half the time it's just total bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And like it might be like a weird ego game. You're just trying to make yourself seem smart, or like you're sort of getting off on the fact that they're not doing very well. And like
he talks about that as well.
Yeah. And I don't think it's necessarily wrong to give people advice, especially when they're asking for it. Although I think he talks to other places, like a lot of the time when people ask for help, all you need to do is listen to them and they know what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I have a really good example of that. Today, my head chef, well, he's firing his former sous chef, and so I got her job. But like she went to Vegas 6 months ago, and she's married, and texted my head chef and was like, "Yo, like I want your dick. I have a total crush on you. When I get back, we should like fucking the walk-in." And so it took him like 2 weeks, but he texted her husband because he's a pretty fucking like he's a good guy, I guess. Better guy than most guys, I think, because he was single, I think. And so he's just like, yo, like your girl's doing this shit. It's, uncomfortable for me. I'm her boss. Like, it's just not cool. It's not a cool thing. She got really angry at them, and they've been like basically fighting like cats and dogs ever since. And it's been very tense. That was like when I started working there about a month ago. It was very, very tense. And so eventually, because I got hired, and the owner of the company and me bonded really quickly, and me and the chef bonded really quickly, they said, "Hey, we're just going to let her go. Finally, we have someone to replace her hours. We'll just let her go." But today, like my chef asked me because she texted him again last night. She was like, "Hey," she got drunk, I guess, or maybe not. I don't know. It was just like, "I still love you." Blah 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 blah. Like,
Oh my God.
she has a husband once again, still same husband. And so my chef comes up to me today and he's just like, "So I want your genuine advice. Like, what do I do?" And I gave him like 9 responses because mostly because of this book that we've been, all putting our lives into for the last couple of days and maybe weeks or week and a half. So it made me think differently about how to respond to this. Part of me was like, maybe I should just listen, which worked really well because he didn't talk to me about any of this stuff. I wanted to ask him about it because I knew some shit was going down because I'm a pretty intuitive person about all this. But I didn't. I was just like, I'm just going to listen and let him talk about it. So by the end of the day, he finally brought it up on his own. I didn't, nag him about it and try to get too touchy about it. Just let him brought it up. And I was like, oh, hey, Jordan Peterson, you're teaching me some stuff. He brought it up, and by him bringing it up, he felt way more comfortable with sharing the entire story with me than if I like nagged him about it or was like, hey, what was that thing with you guys yesterday? He actually felt like he could talk to me for an entire hour before he even asked me like, well, what advice do you have on this? And when he asked me, I was like, well, you got to do what you want to do. Because that was basically what Jordan Peterson was saying, but also kind of me. And then after that, he's like, well, I don't know, man. Like, maybe the right thing to do would be to text her husband again and be like, hey, yo, like, your girl be fucking around again. She's gone. I don't want any part of this. And this is not my life. So please fix your shit. Because if I was a guy, I'd want, another guy to tell me, instead of fucking my, the girl I'm with, I'd want them to tell me like, hey, your girl is trying to fuck me. I did not fuck her because I'm like a decent human being and don't want to, get involved in this. And then he was like, but also I was in a relationship back when she texted me when she was in Vegas and it ruined my relationship. So I'm kind of spiteful. And that's the reason I've really been fighting with her for so long. And I've been treating her like shit is because, well, she basically ruined my relationship and I have to come work with her every day. And I'm like, well, understandable. But then like, you don't want to do anything out of spite. You don't want to put yourself in a spiteful, perspective where you're just putting yourself in a bad karmic balance and just trying to get back. So like, are you trying to tell him, tell the husband about her out of spite to cause drama in her life? Or are you trying to do this because it's the right thing to do? Or are you trying to do this because it's entertaining to you? And I kind of tried to allude to all those things in a very like interpersonal way of like, hey man, like what do you think is the right thing to do? Do you feel like you need to instigate? And one of the first things I said is personally, maybe like I wouldn't do anything at all. I would just like maybe block her number and just walk away, But that was like the personal part of me that I'm trying to fix, which is kind of self-conscious and anxious and is better at kind of walking away from situations that are awkward like that or confrontational would be the word.
Yeah.
And so
It is
it's
interesting to me how a lot of the time you can be having an issue and then you'll ask somebody else, and the most obvious answer there to me is just block their number.
But is
Like,
that the most obvious answer though, or is that like a lie? I mean, are you living in an anxious lie of like self anxiety that has caused you to want to walk away for selfish reasons? Are you really helping anyone but yourself then? You know what I'm saying? Are you making a better world?
To me, it's
Are you
more of a, in that specific instance, it's more of a, it's not appropriate for her to be doing that. And so he would need to let her know that, period.
Oh, and he definitely already did that. I mean, that was like in the past.
And then, I mean, now that she doesn't even work there, just block her number and never talk to her.
Well, I mean, she still works there for the next like 4 days.
Oh, well, just block her number. I don't know, or just ignore the text, or just like this is inappropriate. I don't know.
But then, like, what if she meets another guy that she works with, and she ends up eventually cheating on her husband? Like,
I mean, that's his responsibility. That's their responsibility. you know.
But as a community of people that live in the same city, millions of people, maybe like he feels like he could in the future have a girlfriend, and if another guy, she hit on another guy, that guy would be honest with him, and then they could discuss it and have a non-resentful microaggression relationship that would lead to an angry divorce and shitty kids that want to murder some kids at his high school or something.
I just don't know that it's always. I think that goes to the part where you need to be careful about who you're helping and like what you're, and like you need to set your house in perfect order first before you criticize them. I just wouldn't get involved. But I mean, clearly there's more going on than.
Is that a contrast?
He wants to.
Is that a contrasting statement though, of like making a better community and yet knowing when to build your own house? Because the house is in the community. You build your house in the community that you live in. So I mean, a house is a micro, is a universe within the cosmos.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it sounds like a nuanced issue, but
yeah, you're right.
A lot of the time, the best thing to do is remove yourself from the situation.
Yeah, that's personally probably what I would have done. Absolutely, I would have been honest with my spouse. I've been like, "Yo, hey,
it also depends
Katie,
on the relationship.
This shit happened." But
like, if they're my best friends, then it's going to be a different situation than if they're some random person I work with.
I had a personal experience. If they were my best friends, which has happened, I would completely, pretty much just ignore them. Literally just ignore them for a year or two, maybe 3.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Even that situation would be complicated.
Yeah, I had 2 best friends that were cheating on each other.
Yeah.
Oh, it was super, 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 super awkward.
Sure, I bet. I mean, it's that complicated issue, and I mean, most of the time it's complicated, and there's a lot of reasons for why it's happening, and it's something that they need to work through, and sometimes it means they shouldn't be dating at all. So
yeah,
like.
I just thought I'd share a personal story out of laughs, giggles, and stuff. At the end of the day, before I left work, I just told him to have a beer and laugh it off, not to take it too personally, no matter what happens.
You did the right thing.
Yeah,
that is the right thing. Beer is the right thing.
I think it sounds like you did the right thing, and then I think that the advice you gave was cautious enough and safe enough that
you weren't trying to save your.
Yeah.
But to savor. So yeah, I think that the biggest thing to sum up is in this chapter is take responsibility. Don't blame anything for the problems. Take responsibility for things. Have humility when approaching solutions, and then you just keep doing that, and then maybe other people will start doing that. But it doesn't matter because all you can really control is yourself. So you start doing that. And then it just kind of compounds and makes everything better.
Yeah.
Yay!
Thanks for listening. It's been a blast. To get engaged, head over to sequesteredsuperlative.com and subscribe with your email to get all the latest updates, including new book discussion audio, blog posts, and more. So long until next time.